Hi, this is Miriam from Keto My Way. Good Monday morning, regardless of when you are watching this. It's Monday for me. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about a cautionary tale. I have been working with a couple of cookbooks that do not give nutritional information. They're keto cookbooks. And the thing is that the reasoning behind it is that you may use a different brand of ingredients than the author of the cookbook uses. Another reason why they choose not to do nutritional ingredients is let's say, not with baking, because that sort of has to be identical, because baking is really a science. But let's say you have 16 ounces of string beans and the recipe calls for 14 ounces and you say, the heck with it, I'll put in all 16. So anyway, the gist of the reasoning is because the user of the recipe might not do exactly what the writer of the recipe did. I happen to not agree with that reasoning because I think when somebody is very interested in the nutrition counts, that person can put in his or her own counts for things if she knows that she is straying from the original recipe. Anyway, I tend to think it's the lazy way out, and I'm not looking to offend anybody who doesn't put nutritional information in their recipes. But the thing is that it's a good place to start. So let's say a recipe has 7 carbs, and that's what the recipe author put down. And then you can look and say, okay, well, I'm going to double check my brands, or I'm going to double check these numbers. I'll put it in with the way I put it in. You can let the person who's doing the recipe make up their own minds whether or not to follow the recipe, either exactly or make adjustments. Anyway, the reason I'm talking about this is that I had made a couple of recipes this weekend, and I just, as a cautionary tale, want to say that even though ingredients are keto and therefore it falls under a keto recipe, that the carbs on one of them was just enormous. It was a biscuit type of recipe. My family happens to have loved it, and I did too, and I had one. But I followed the recipe sort of trusting that the person, if the person called it keto, that the counts would be reasonable. I mean, shame on me for not putting in the nutritional information before I bought it, before I made it, and decided on the portion sizes. But the recipe called for 10 to 12 biscuits. So even the portion size, well, this was the other thing, is that the recipe writers who don't put in nutritional information might also say, well, you know, I may do it for 10 portions, you may do it for 8 portions, fine. But, you know, put in the nutritional information and say this is for 8 portions. And then if you make 6, I used to do this all the time with Weight Watchers, not a big deal. Let's say with points, for instance, and something was 8 portions and it was 3 points each, so it's 24 points. And I says, but I want to make 6 portions out of it, so I took 6 and I divided it into 24, and so my serving size was 4 points. It's not rocket science to convert recipes the way you need them. Anyway, back to my biscuit story. So it was all keto recipes. It was in a ketogenic cookbook. I made it. The family loved it. I brought a couple home from dinner, and I put in all the ingredients, and oh my God, for 12 alone, it was more than 10 carbs per, and I made 9, so mine came out to about 12 carbs. Granted, it was keto because it was made with only keto ingredients, such as almond flour and sour cream and butter and all this goodness, but that was a lot for me. I mean, if you're just eating keto for general health and you're loose with your total carbs, some people are doing 30, some people are doing 50, or you're doing net carbs. Oh, I gotta sneeze. But I'm doing total 20. And so for this to be 11, that was more than half my day's allotment. And not only that, but I'm battling insulin resistance. So I'm really careful, usually not to eat more than, 6 to 8 carbs per meal. And I had other things. Oh, and also from this cookbook, I made what was called a stuffing recipe. Had nothing to do with stuffing, and I knew that. I knew that when I tasted it. It was not going to be like stuffing. It was made like with 2 pounds of cauliflower and, 8 ounces of mushrooms and 12 ounces of leeks and hazelnuts and whatever went into it. It was 12 portions. I didn't even put that into my Fitness Pal. But I know even if I were to total it out and do net carbs on that, because generally I do net carbs on vegetables, but usually only on raw vegetables, it was not a hit, and I'm going to throw it all out when I get home. But if I liked it and I were to put it in, I'd be frightened. I think one portion of that and one biscuit probably put me way over my carb limit for the day, net or not net. And so I'm just putting this as a cautionary tale. The way you eat keto, and maybe you don't have metabolic issues like I do, and it's as long as you know it's all keto ingredients, it comes from a reputable source, and all of that, that might be okay for you. So I'm not mentioning names, and I'm not saying exactly what the recipes were, because I don't, I'm not saying that you shouldn't follow them, but I'm just saying that if you're really counting total carbs and you do have metabolic issues, whether it's insulin resistance, whatever it is, and you have to be careful about your carbohydrate count. Just be careful going in with recipes, even if they come from a very trusted ketogenic source. Their definition of what's okay for a meal might not be okay for your definition for a meal. And not only that, if you have more than one of those recipes like I did yesterday, it can be dangerous. Now, I measured my ketones when I got home last night. Not when I got home, but before bed. I always measure around 9 o'clock. My blood ketone level was 1.7. So I didn't do any damage in terms of ketosis, and maybe those recipes are fine. They didn't spike my insulin. They didn't spike my blood sugar. This is okay. So and that's why I'm saying, you don't have to stay away from these things, but when you're using a recipe, whether it comes from the internet or from a cookbook, if it doesn't have nutritional information, just figure that out for yourself if that's an important factor. If just staying keto, and that's what this lazy keto is, you just make sure you eat keto, and the exact macro count doesn't matter, then you're fine. But I'm not fine with that. So I just wanted to share that with you and say happy Monday. But those recipes are going to be tossed out when I get home. The finished products. I'll keep the recipes, and if some of them appeal to me, what I've learned my lesson, I will do the carb count prior to making the recipe. Anyway, so that's it. I just wanted to tell you that. So Keto My Way, please come visit me on my Facebook page. It's a small group. I haven't gotten quite to posting as often as I'd like. I will not be posting these recipes. But please come and visit, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.